This is the AmazFit T-Rex 3, a watch that some people have called a Garmin Killer or a Garmin Fenix Killer or whatever it may be. And I'm here to tell you straight up, that's not anywhere near the truth. But that doesn't mean it's not a really interesting watch doing a bunch of really cool things. I've been using this watch every single day on my wrist for the last 2+ months, 24 hours a day for runs and rides and swims and hikes and you name it, it's been there. And within that time frame, I've come to learn a lot about this watch, the things that it does exceptionally well. And it does some things exceptionally well, better than their competitors. But it also does a lot of things just simply kind of half-assed. That's like the only way to describe it. So I'm going to walk through all the things it does well and all the things that I want AmazFit or Zepp, the company behind AmazFit, to change. Because if they can change all those quirky things, probably not in this unit, but in the next version down the road, they could indeed become a legit competitor to a Fenix series or maybe some other Garmin watch. So with that, let's just simply dive into it. First up, here are the specs right there. I'm just gonna throw the specs at you. You don't really need to know. The main thing here is it's got a 1.5-inch AMOLED display. So basically it's a nice, big, brilliant AMOLED display, not a MIP-based display. It's considered a 48mm case size watch, though it might feel a little bit wider than that just because of some of the design styling there. And then of course on the back, it's got the optical heart rate sensor package that you see there. And it even has a depth gauge inside there down to 45 meters. So very similar to something like the Garmin Fenix 8 series, the Apple Watch Ultra series, or even some of the competitors from Suunto. But probably the most impressive thing on this watch is simply the price. It's priced at $279, which is crazy, like backcrap crazy low. And in the holidays, it was down to $234 US, which is even more insane. So that puts it basically in the same price range as Garmin's Instinct 2 series, where that's mostly hung out in the $199 to $299 range. But of course, it puts it at roughly a third of the price of something like the Garmin Fenix 7 or Fenix 8 series. Thus, all the interest in potentially calling it it's not a killer, let's just be honest, it's not a killer. So let's start off with the basics first, and then we'll walk into the sport profile stuff, mapping, navigation, even get into some of the free diving bits, and then accuracy, and we'll call it a wrap. So starting off, you got the watch face right there. I just been using the default watch face this entire time. I like it, I'm good with that. But down from that, you've got all their widgets. You can customize the order of these widgets you want, get rid of them, add them, etc. But the very first one you're gonna see by default is called Zepp Flow. That is their voice assistant. You can go ahead and tap on that and then tell the watch something to look tomorrow, and it'll go ahead and just give you that answer on the screen. There's no speaker, there's a beeper, but no speaker, so it will not give you an audible response, but you'll have to read it on the screen there. And for some things, this works just fine. If you want to open up, for example, a sport profile mode or check your heart rate, it does a pretty good job of that. But I found when you ask it most other questions, it gets pretty easily confused. And one of the easiest examples of the confusion, if you will, is simply asking what the weather is for tomorrow. No matter how many times I try this, I've been trying this for months now, it always just tells me the weather right now for today, right where I am, which is not where I asked. Still, again, their competitors, Garmin, for example, introduced a similar functionality on their Fenix 8 series, as well as having it on their Venue series cheaper watches in the same kind of ballpark price range a long time ago, and I find both of those implementations largely kind of useless, to be honest. And the same is true, honestly, on an Apple Watch. I just don't have a reason to talk to my watch in like almost any scenario, so I'm not going to give too much of a hard time in the grand scheme of things. Scrolling on down from there, you've got all your widgets. One of the things you're going to notice though is those widgets populate with a delay. So as I go down the list, it'll show me something, and then like a second, half to 2 seconds later, it'll update the data. That's especially noticeable in the morning when it's going to have the data from yesterday on there. Again, lots of just little quirks, but it is displaying the data just fine. And hey, a quick note, if you're finding this video interesting and useful, just watch it all the way through. That's all that the YouTube algorithm gods care about these days, and we have to keep those gods happy, right? Thanks. You'll see, for example, your steps. If you click open that right there, you can see your steps today, you can see your activity, your stand time. You can also see your heart rate, of course, and check that at any point in time. Likewise, you'll see your sleep data. And I've had a pretty good look from a sleep accuracy standpoint. In terms of the time I went to sleep and the time I woke up, I don't judge sleep phase data or sleep stage data because there isn't really a great way to do that from an accuracy standpoint. The so-called gold standards are only in the mid 80 percentile range, and that's in a best case scenario, and most of the time they're quite a bit lower than that. But in terms of when I went to sleep and when I woke up, good job, it nails that. It also has nap support as well. And on a couple of occasions that I've taken naps over the last few months, it did a good job at tracking those too. All of that is good. That said, I will point out that the first week and a half of using this watch, it would not track any sleep data whatsoever. Or more accurately, it would track it and then immediately delete it the moment it synced to my smartphone app. The Zepp app, the app that you use, the AmazFit app, if you will. This is something that every single day I would see it on the screen, and then the second it synced to the phone, boom, it would delete all of my sleep data and all of my activity tracking data. Everything except workouts. Workouts did stay. I did a bunch of searching in Reddit, and turned out this has been an issue for years. So then I went back to AmazFit and said, hey, what's up? And they did a bunch of digging and basically just shrugged at the end of the day and said to go ahead and delete the app off my phone and reset my watch, and maybe that will work. And sure enough, it did work, but I mean, come on, like that's a pretty big issue to have around for years and just go shrug. But in any case, once we got past that, we can start looking at not just that sleep data, but more importantly, the readiness score data. This is a very similar concept to what Garmin has in their training readiness, or what Fitbit has in their daily readiness, now just called readiness, and plenty of other companies out there as well. What this does is this takes all those components you see right there, and it gives you a score each day. The challenge, though, with AmazFit score is it's basically the same almost every single day. Not almost, it's every single day. It's virtually identical. My readiness score has ranged between roughly 76 and roughly like 90 every single day, no matter what I did. I could do a 4-hour ride followed by an hour run and on 3 hours of sleep, and it's like, you're ready. 80%. It did not matter. Versus all the other readiness scores I've used out there, from Garmin to Whoop to Oura to Fitbit, have all ranged quite a bit based on like normal things. Like if I sleep for 2 or 3 hours at night because of whatever reasons, my readiness score will be crap. Here it's like, you're good. And so yeah, it's ultimately just garbage data that doesn't provide much use, which is too bad because I said the underlying data is good. Their sleep data is good. The HRV data each night nearly identically matched with both Garmin watches as well as Oura and Whoop bands. Like all that data is pretty strong. It's just simply that how they blend that together in a score is apparently designed to make you happy every day and not actually give you actionable feedback. In any case, let's wrap up with some of the basics here, talking about the charging and the battery life. This comes with this charger that you see right there. This is kind of the general trend in the last year or so, is that companies give a small little charging puck and then you use your own USB-C cable to plug in the side of it. I've got no problems with that, and the charging worked pretty well. It is kind of slow to charge, about 2.5 hours is the official claim there. That seems about right. But they make up for that with the fact that the battery lasts flipping forever. Like I'm getting like 7 to 10 days with an always-on display. This is, by the way, an always-on display configuration. You can change that if you want, but that's how I use it. So 7 to 10 days in that configuration with 1 to like 4 hours of GPS time per day outside doing sports. And so that is super impressive. Good job there. So let's then talk about sport modes, because they've got a lot of them. 176 sport modes to be precise. And it's amazing, not like AmazFit amazing, it's just amazing to look through all the sport modes there. You start off, you tap the upper right hand button, you see the sport modes, and then you go on down a little ways and you find basically the folder that has all the other sport modes into it. There we go, more workout options. You tap it open and they're all categorized. Cool, right? Logical, makes sense. You go down, swimming, running, cycling, that's all makes sense. And then you get to dance, you're like, okay, I'm with that. Then you get to combat workouts and you're like, okay, that makes sense. Wrestling, martial arts, etc. You got ball workouts, which is again soccer, football, etc. And then you go down, you're like water, yep, winter makes sense, skiing, and then extreme workouts. And you're like, tell me more. What is extreme workouts? Paragliding, fair enough. Skydiving, wingsuit flying, yep, that's extreme. I agree with you there. You back out though and go down. You're like, leisure workouts, hula hooping, frisbee, darts, kite flying, tug of war, esports, sure, air walker, shuffleboard, foosball. And then you go back down one last time and you get board and card games. And here you can be sure to track your chess and checkers workouts. I mean, we can't be leaving out these sports. And that of course gets to ultimately the differences between different companies and how they do sport modes. I'm not really sure how you categorize checkers differently from a sport profile standpoint, but I'm here for it. Maybe go. In any case, once your sport profiles are all set up, you just simply tap one to open it. If it's a GPS profile like running, it'll find GPS, there we go, and I'm literally off and running by tapping the go button there. If it's something like cycling where you have sensor support, for example, for cycling power meters, cadence sensors, and things like that, you can also pair it to a heart rate strap if you want, then it'll connect to those sensors. I've been using cycling power meters with varying success on this watch. Note that it is only Bluetooth smart sensors, but again, I do appreciate that it has that. It also has the ability to broadcast your heart rate out as well. If you scroll down from there, you can do different structured training workouts. You can create workouts on the watch. You can also create them on the smartphone app, like you see right there. There's like 8x800s with different targets, but the targets are fairly limited. For example, you cannot use cycling power targets. It's just one kind of simple example there, but you can do the basics for running without any real problem. With all that said, you can go ahead and tap that go button to get started on your workout, and you'll see your data fields on the watch. All that worked just fine. I've been using it for runs and rides from like a basic data standpoint. point without any issues at all. You can also customize those data pages and data fields as well. You do it on the watch, not using the smartphone app though, but you just scroll down in that sport profile. You can put up to 6 data fields per page and add a crap ton of different data pages. Again, all pretty standard issue stuff. Now, once you're done with your workout, you'll go ahead and tap save there and it'll see the final summary on your watch. Again, pretty straightforward. And then you'll also see a final summary on the smartphone app, the Zep app, with all the details there. If you've linked up in a platform like Strava, it'll sync off to that, but they don't natively support training peaks today. They support it via Terra, which so-so, but it's just support it natively. There's no good reason not to. Be much cleaner for users. In fact, since we're talking about some of the data bits there, one of the other challenges I saw is when I did have power meters that did actually work, it would show the power data just fine in the app, but it doesn't send that power data off to Strava, which is a bit of a disappointment. And then I had some workouts where it just simply fired a blank for elevation altogether. Here's a walk I did with the kids on like the day after Christmas or whatever, just a very simple like hike, a couple hour hike with some kind of ups and downsies, and you can see it showed 0 total ascent, 0 altitude, 0 elevation on the watch, but the app did show it later, so it figured out correcting it after the fact, but not on the watch itself. Now, the last training feature we'll talk about before we get into navigation and some of the diving bits is the training load piece there. So you can scroll down the screen and see your training load for the day. And there's 2 things I like here. Well, there's one thing I like and one thing I don't like. First of all, the thing I really like here is that they keep your load for a 7-day rolling average. Something that other companies will reset your load each Monday morning, which is the stupidest thing on earth, because if you did a really big work, you did a marathon on Sunday, right? You did a marathon Sunday, Monday morning comes along and it's like, boom, your load's gone. You have 0 load. Go ahead and restart the week with another marathon today. Versus all other proper companies will keep that load as a 7-day trailing average. And AmazFit does a good job there at keeping that 7-day trailing average load. However, I have seen that the load is really high, like almost double what other companies do from a load standpoint. So their algorithm seems to be weighted a little bit weird there, but is at least consistently weighted weird. So I don't mind that as much. I mean, after all, load is just a made up number. So as long as you're consistent within that, that's kind of the main thing there. They also do show VO2 max scores. Number 1, that requires running. It doesn't work for any sort of cycling stuff. Number 2, it's not super accurate. It's like 6 to 7 units below my current VO2 max, as was tested just pretty darn recently, actually. Okay, so let's then talk navigation. This thing does have downloadable maps on it. You can select the region on your smartphone, basically the area you want to download, and then it connects to Wi-Fi to download those maps. It can download base maps, ski maps, as well as contour maps, which again is super cool. The downloads generally just take a couple seconds for a really small area or a couple minutes for a larger area. Pretty straightforward. Then comes kind of the messy part, which is creating a route that you're going to use on those maps. And the reason is that they don't have a route builder in the Zep app, so you have to get those routes from somewhere else. And your 2 core options here are to create a route somewhere else and then download that GPX file or TCX file, etc., and then pull that into the app. So you have to first create that route somewhere else, save and export that file, then import it into your phone, and then save and open it with the Zep app. And once that's done, then it's on your Zep app from there to push then to your watch. If that sounds confusing, it's because it's cumbersome and clumsy and all the things you would expect to be. If they could add Strava route integration, even better, but Komoot, good, right? That would kind of make it a lot easier. The problem is it seems like whoever was assigned to doing that was not allowed to talk to the rest of the team, because it is such a bizarrely siloed feature inside the Zep app that is clear they had no access to anything else. So you go ahead and you link your account up using like the profile third-party account linking, and then go in there and connect into Komoot. But then to go ahead and import routes, you have to do that same step every single time. You have to go into your settings and then profile settings, third-party account link settings, then click Komoot, then import route, then choose your route. Once that route is selected, choose to download it to the AmazFit app. Then once that's done, back your ass all the way back out again into the workout panel, followed by the My Routes panel, followed by the route itself, select the route, send to watch, then it is on your watch. I am not kidding. That is the process every single time. And look, I know AmazFit, you're listening to this right now. I know you're watching this, and I hope you're partly laughing, and I hope you're partly sitting there going, yeah, that's dumb, because it's dumb. Just fix it. Now, of course, once you've got it on your watch, you go into sport profile, for example, running, you go to navigation, you choose your route, you choose to navigate to it. You can see details about your route, which is kind of handy. You can see it on the map there, you can see the elevation profile. It even like does some splitting up of the climb and things like that. And of course, you can follow the route. And I've had pretty good luck following the route. It is breadcrumb style navigation, but it will go ahead and give you turn prompts, turn left, right, etc. It'll also give you off-course deviation warnings as well. In fact, you can even customize how far off the course you get before you get a deviation warning. That's pretty handy. No other company can do that. The problem with the maps, at least in my area here in Majorca, is that there isn't a delineation between water and not water. I'm not kidding. Look at this map right here. I am on an island, as Majorca is, surrounded by water. I'm on a peninsula of the island, surrounded by water. But the color of the map for water is the exact same as the color of the map for fields. So I cannot figure out if I'm about to go off a cliff into the water or if I'm going inland towards land. And this may sound silly because it is. That said, they do at least show street names for some streets and some things on my maps, which is nice. But I think if there's anything that shows this is not a Garmin Killer or Garmin Fenix Killer, it's anything and everything to do with navigation and routing. As you just saw, it's a laughable clown car. Like, I get that, yes, at the end of the day, I can eventually get a route onto this and I can eventually go out and hope that I'm not about to run into the water. But that isn't what a Garmin Fenix is, right? We all know that. We all agree upon that. So using that as clickbait isn't really helpful to anyone. Now, one of the new features in this that is super cool is the ability to have freediving as a sport, and has a depth gauge, as I mentioned, to 45 meters. The company says they've gone through certifications that you see right there. Those are all the standard dive industry certifications around basically depth gauges in particular. Not so much like diving per se, but around the depth gauge itself. And I've talked about all the certifications at length in the past and all the procedures. Assuming they've done that, I haven't seen like a certificate, but assuming they've done all those certifications, that's pretty cool. So I am a scuba diver and I am an aspiring free diver, but I'm not yet a free diver. So from a diving standpoint, I can't use that. That doesn't support diving as a profile for various reasons. It does support free diving. So I took it out and did some like shallow free diving, snorkeling stuff, as deep as my little bay would go here, which is like 7 to 8 meters roughly, just to kind of see how it works. And you know, at a basic level, it does like every other watch out there. You can see your depth on there, you can see your maximum depth, your ascent rate, and all the kind of stuff is shown on the watch. It does a good job of that, very much like Apple would, or Garmin would, or Suunto, etc. All that is pretty good. Except as I was doing one of these test runs out there, or test swims over and over down to the bottom, the thing showed me a battery warning that I could not get rid of. I'm not kidding. I'm down at the bottom. Here is an actual picture of it at the bottom right there. And boom, it put a battery warning over the top of the screen that I could not dismiss. So if I was free diving deeper, I could not see the time, which is super important for free diving. I could not see my depth, equally important. And there was no method whatsoever to get rid of that. The only way it finally went away was when I got back to the surface, it gave me like the summary for each descent, kind of each little dive, if you will, and that dismissed it, like I forcibly dismissed that battery alert. From a dive safety standpoint, that is a massive no-no. That would easily violate all those certifications that they have there, because you always have to be able to see your depth. That's like a core fundamental thing of diving, up to the claimed depth of the device, in this case 45 meters, and I couldn't. And I get that that is an easy bug for them to fix, but it's also kind of indicative of all the other things I've seen on this device. It's always a, yeah, that's cool, but this little quirk, right? And it's just, how many little quirks do you have before you go, it's not really what they're advertising. But we still have one more section to go here, which is accuracy of the heart rate, GPS, and elevation. So I'm just gonna pick some of the hardest activities I've had over the 50, 60 activities in the last couple months here, because they're honestly most indicative of how things have gone. So right there is a interval run from the other day, an hour and a half of fun little intervals, and it was virtually spot on the entire time. Only a few seconds at the initial couple minutes there where it wobbled slightly, probably because of the colder temps, but after that it was spot on these intervals, like really good job there. From an accuracy standpoint on that particular run, it was mostly loops, but it did go through a high-rise downtown area with a bunch of really high-rise, well, hotels and stuff like that, and had no problems in the most accurate GPS tracking mode, which is the default tracking mode there. Likewise, here is another workout. This is an indoor cycling workout, a slate of intervals for almost 2 hours, spot on across the board. Again, a very small little deviation in the first couple minutes as it's warming up. Again, this was done actually on an indoor trainer that was outside at night in the cool air. So kind of the normal for wrist-based optical sensors to have a little bit of warm-up period there. And this otherwise was spot on across the board. However, when it came to outdoor cycling, things are a little bit rougher. Here you can see an outdoor ride I did, almost 4-hour outdoor ride actually, up and down the famed Saclaroba ride in Spain here. And you can see for the first hour, it was pretty good. Going up essentially, it was really, really good. Then as I went to some kind of ups and downs with a bit more variation in speed, it started to lose the plot there. It's that blue line at the bottom. But then the main climb, an hour-long climb there, it completely lost the plot up until the very, very end when it snapped into place. So outdoor riding routing is one of the hardest things for optical heart rate sensors, and this generally has failed me across the board on every single ride, whether it's a off-road ride or on-road ride, smooth pavement, as was the case here, very, very smooth pavement. It just really struggled in those scenarios. But from a GPS track standpoint, in the mountains, it had no problems. Here's just a bunch of pictures showing that. It was identical to the other units I had with me. And that's been true across every single ride and run. The GPS has been very, very good. I've had no real issues there. Except for open water swimming. I've had some swims that were like sort of acceptable, and some swims like this one here, which were more on the not sort of acceptable range there. You can see it compared to a Garmin watch on the other wrist. And it's not quite great. It's just not great. I would say it's on the lowest possible tier of barely acceptable accuracy for an open water swim, but not something that I would personally accept as my day-to-day swimming device. That said, though, overall heart rate accuracy is good except for outdoor cycling. GPS accuracy is good across the board. Elevation accuracy, as you can see right here, as compared to a bunch of different elevation sources, is also pretty solid. So what's the final thoughts on this? Well, it's in a kind of a quirky spot, right? In initial, your gut says, damn, that's an amazing price point, $279 or whatever the heck it is on sale any given point in time. All those features there. But then it depends on how much you value each feature. For example, if you actually value mapping and navigation, which is a core feature of this, as I said, it's not good at all, right? So how valuable is not good mapping and not great navigation experience when it comes to all those hoops that you have to jump through? Ultimately, if I look at AmazFit or Zepp as the company is, it reminds me a lot of COROS a number of years ago. Now, of course, AmazFit's been around a long time, just like COROS has, and there was a point in COROS's existence where their main thing in life was copying Garmin, to the font and to the icon level. It's crazy, some of the first few watches. And they would add a ton of features that were half-baked. That was, again, COROS's early days. But over the last few years, they've gotten much better at actually developing their own features and spending just a little bit more thought on those features so they are truly feature complete and truly useful to real endurance athletes, as opposed to just being feature checklists. Because right now, AmazFit is mostly in the feature checklist category. They are checking off as many features as they can, so you can go side by side between two watches and say, yeah, they've got all the same features. But under the covers, those features are not at all equal in terms of how they're implemented. So again, this watch is fascinating, battery life is fascinating, there's lots of things that are fascinating, but my request to AmazFit is focus a little bit longer on these features. Finish baking them. And the challenge here we have is that AmazFit is well known for creating one watch per year in each category. So the T-Rex 3 came out this past August-ish, September, something like that. And probably next August there'll be the T-Rex 4. And that's normal. But what's not normal is that AmazFit virtually never adds existing features to their older watches. That's just their company's MO. It's how they've done it forever. And with that short of a life cycle, it's really tough to recommend this watch when you know the next one's coming along and maybe that'll fix some of those features. But if AmazFit could do a better job at committing to updating these watches and also finishing those features, then yeah, AmazFit could eventually become a legit competitor, killer, whatever you want to call it in this segment. But today, no. Not yet. In any case, hopefully you found this video interesting or useful. We got CES coming up this week with a bunch of interesting stuff, so you definitely want to hit subscribe down there if you're not already subscribed. With that, have a good one.